This is an example of using the ADAS, aggregate demand, aggregate supply model, to analyse the expected effects of a policy. And I've also previously produced videos using the Keynesian cross and using the ISLM model to explain the same policy. So remember, we have here a government of a small developing country which gives all the public sector workers a large pay rise. So as before, we treat this as a fiscal expansion. Expansionary fiscal policy. And the Keynesian cross and the ISLM models both explain that would give you an increase in demand. So we assume that here this is going to lead to an increase in demand, aggregate demand. So AD1, AD0, if I say this is AD0, we start here, that's going to increase and end up at AD1. That means that, I should have written this as an increase plus delta AD. So an increase in AD0 goes up to AD1. On the diagram, that means that for every price level, demand will increase, which means this AD0 curve will move to the right to become the new it's very difficult to get these curves straight, let alone parallel. It's roughly right. So we can draw it out here. So this is the AD1. Let's move it that way. Now if we had an original equilibrium over here, where aggregate demand, short run aggregate supply and long run aggregate supply were all in equilibrium, that's where we started. Now when aggregate demand increases, the precise place that we end up depends on what happens to supply. Now in the short run, we assume that supply adjusts like this. So, and remember, there's three ways that we did on the course and all the textbooks to explain why this is. I think possibly the simplest one is the sticky wages policy, which is that when aggregate demand increases, people see that the price of the things that they're selling goes up, because in each individual market, or in many individual markets, there's more demand, which means that the prices go up in those markets, so the aggregate price level goes up. But when you're selling something under a condition of sticky wages, and the thing you're selling, the price of the thing you're selling goes up, but the wages that you pay to your workers at the moment don't go up straight away, then it's more profitable. So it's more profitable to make stuff, so you increase more stuff. So in the short run, when the price level goes up, it's worth producing a bit more stuff. There are other arguments, of course. There's the sticky price is one that says that the prices of some things in the economy take longer to adjust, which means that the prices of other things will increase, which means they become more profitable, so that people will make more of those goods. Similarly, the misperceptions thing is that when the price level of everything goes up, the thing that you're most aware of is that the price of what you're selling goes up. You don't quite realise that in actual fact everything's gone up. So you think the price of what you're selling has gone up relative to other things. So your production is, again, you think more profitable, so you increase production. So whether or not you use the sticky wages or the sticky prices or the misperceptions idea, in the short run, when the demand goes up, the price level starts to increase, you think it's worthwhile producing more. So we move from A to this point B here. So in the short run, what we expect to see is an increase in outputs from Y0 up to Y1. And this would be Y0 here, the equilibrium level. We move out to this point here. And similarly in the short run, the price level has already been there. There's been an increase in the price level, so an upwards pressure on inflation. And if you want to label it, you could label it as P0, because that's P1. So that's P0 there. So there's been increased inflation. But that's only part of the answer, because one nice thing that the long-run aggregate supply and demand model does is it allows you to think about, well, what's the initial impact, and then how's that likely to play out over the longer time period. So in the long run, the idea is that these misperceptions, or the sticky wages and so on, they don't last forever. If the price of everything goes up, sticky wages stay low, so that owners of businesses are making more profits, the workers will respond to that by demanding more wages. So wages will eventually get bid upwards. So as wages increase, production will become less profitable again. So the amount that people are willing to supply as each given price will start to fall as wages catch up, and similarly as misperceptions start to get corrected, people realise they don't actually have a product which is selling at a higher price relative to other things, and so on. As those misperceptions start to catch up, or as sticky prices start to adjust, short-run aggregate supply will fall back again. So instead of being here, it'll fall back this way to somewhere over here. Yeah, now there'll be a short intermission where we try and get a parallel line. See that? So in the long run, this short-run aggregate supply curve will start to fall back as the things that were fixed, or the misperceptions, start to adjust. So short-run aggregate supply will change from here, go back to here. So there's a fall in short-run aggregate supply. So short-run aggregate supply 0 goes down to short-run aggregate supply 1, leading to a fall in output, because now demand is fixed at this high level. So we fall back to point C here, where Y has gone down from Y1 back to Y0 again. But if aggregate demand is fixed and the supply starts to reduce, that puts more upwards pressure on prices. So the price level will go up again. So the upwards pressure on prices is exacerbated, so you have more inflationary pressure. So expect another increase in the price level. So P1 goes further up to P2. So in the short run we expect some inflationary pressure and an increase in output. In the long run we expect a decrease in output again and more inflationary pressure. So no output change in the long run, but increased inflation. So the lesson from this is that according to this theory, this model, in the long run, increasing aggregate demand can boost supply briefly, but in the long run, all it does is leave you with the same supply but increased price or increased inflation level. Now, what about the limitations of this analysis? Well, it doesn't have the limitations of the others in it. It is allowing things to vary, so prices are allowed to vary, interest rates are allowed to vary. There's this nice distinction between short and long run, so we're not assuming that things are fixed. So really, in a sense, it's more powerful than the other ones. The main omission in terms of economic variables is that you don't explicitly see what's happening to the interest rates in here. So there's no information on the interest rates. And as you might see, sometimes you can have the same thing happening in the ADAS model can be associated with interest rates going up or interest rates coming down. So you can't tell from this whether they've gone up or down. So there's no information on interest rates, and in a closed economy with no trade, that's of some interest because interest rates affect investment, which affects output. That's already built into this model. Though of course, if interest rates are going up, that means that there'll be less investment, so the long run aggregate supply won't be expanding so much because there's not so much investment. So that is important. In the open economy model, it also matters because as you will study in open economy economics, macroeconomics, higher interest rates tend to increase the exchange rates and deter exports, And lower interest rates tend to depreciate the currency and encourage exports. So it has an effect on the external sector. But we can't see the interest rates so clearly from this diagram. Apart from that, the limitations of the analysis are the same as for all the basic macroeconomic models, that they ignore a lot of the detail of sort of what's happening on the supply side, the distributional consequences, and then the political economy things. Are these things politically sustainable? Which groups benefit? Which groups with campaigns get around the pay rise by, say, the private sector workers might campaign for a higher wage and so on. But as far as the macroeconomic model goes, this is the conclusion we expect. And that's the end of this example.